So here we are then, the main part of the tutorial. What we're going to do is we're going to go over some drums that I've made, beginning with the original recorded snare hits, as you can see, the 200 Hertz low and the more pronounced high. My process for those snares to get them sounding lovely, and then I've pre-made some drums which we're going to go over, why I've done things, why you might want to do it on your mix downs or why you might not. I will say I'm doing this for sort of intermediate level, so if you have no idea about production whatsoever, you're going to be a bit lost. But yeah, let's start with these then. So these are the original snare hits that we recorded in, if you remember. These are probably quite quiet, so these are the original hits. You can hear there the 200 Hertz, just past 200 according to the spectrum, and then the higher, as you can see, still recording around 200, but you can tell that's a lot harsher. So what I did is, to save us time in this tutorial, I found the best one from both, which I thought work well together, and I placed them down here, as you can see. Oh, I did forget to say, sorry, I'm using the same mic for this as I used for my snare recording, and the master bus, as you can see, is set up how it was described in the previous 10 minutes setting up video. Anyway, here we are then. This was the low end one that I chose. Very nice. And here's the higher tops, which works well on its own, I have to say. So to start with, all I've done, slight high shelf from about 500, taking about 3 dB off, just so the highs of the low end one aren't interfering, and then just rounding the bottom end off, small slope, 12 dB, just to give it room. And this is what they sound like together, which for a recorded snare through a £20 microphone, I don't think it's bad at all. Obviously, I did say about the fat FX use, so I use that as a limiter, well, a clipper should I say. It's hard clipping, not compressing, just keeping things from going over naught, which is where you want it. So what I've done next is I have bounced that into this. So this was the first bounce of 3. Add a little bit of glue to this. If you shouldn't, again, I'm not going to go into what compression I've done on it, but I've done a very hard compression there. Very, very slow attack, very quick release. I want it to be snappy. I want to hit those harmonics hard. Nearly 10 dB of gain. At this point, I'm looking to get things louder as well. So I'm not, as long as it isn't distorting or messing up, I'm not paying too much attention at the early stage about gain staging. Just want to get that thick, crunchy. When I make drums for my tunes, I tend to export and put them back in and export time and time again to get it sounding big and loud. Being careful not to overshoot the stereo out. Keeps things loud. I like to master a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression maybe at the end. I'm not one for having a quiet tune and then mastering it fully. I've worked like this for 11 years now, so we can hear that with the glue, and you can see, like I say, we're gaining quite a bit there, but that's what I want. I don't want it to be flimsy. It's drum and bass as well, so it's got to be a punchy snare. So we exported that. I bounced that out with those plugins on, sorry, pardon me, and we get down to this one, which you can see just by the waveform. Never be afraid to just look at the waveform. Is fatter, bigger. It's got more of a backbone, I would say. Again, I want the compression to be harsh. I want it to punch through, but I don't want to lose the essence of a snare. So I've opened an EQ there. Obviously you can see I've been doing a bit more precise EQ around 400 to 500, just to clean up that muddy area. A lot of frequencies can build up through the mix around this area, and before you know it, it just sounds like crap, basically. Again, I'm moving at a fast pace because I don't want to linger too long. Bit of envelope shaping going on, just to get that attack of the initial snare bright and sharp. Again, I want it kicking through. I may be adding drum and bass, especially what I make. It's going to have a shed load of bass, obviously, and a lot of frequencies coming in the mid-range for the mid basses, the sort of synthy sounds. So I want the snare to be punching through that mix. If the snare's not punching through, it has no driving power. You don't get. It doesn't feel the same in a club. Not that matters at the moment. And taking a bit of gain off as well. Ooh. Taking a bit of gain off. That gain on the release, all I'm doing there is cutting the tail. I could sit here for days and I could fade it or automate it, but taking the release makes it shorter, punchier. Again, it's going to sit in that mix lovely, especially for drum and bass. Smack attack. Now this is a transient designer just for transients. It's not, I mean, it has a bit of shaping like the envelope, but again, this is just going to get the attack transient and pierce through. If we listen to that without, so that's without, and then we'll put it on. For me, I can hear a big difference. It might not be audible to some people. You can see what it's doing. It's just making that snare slap. I just want the attack to be in your face and the release to just quietly go about its business. For the drum and bass, for a drum and bass tune, especially as I've made kind of jump uppy drums down here. And then again, fat effects, just to limit that, stop it going over naught, and it is on naught, as you can see. So without that, pretty damn sure. Yeah, quite a lot. And again, that's technically cheating, and what I'm doing there is I'm hiding the fact that I haven't gain staged properly. But again, this is not a snare that's going to sit in the mix. I'm going to export it back out. And then even these drums I would export now onto a hard drive, onto my computer, use my Wave plugins instead of Slate Digital ones that I've got on here. So that's the snare, and I think now we've got the kick snare bus. How are we doing for time? We've got 20 minutes left. This is what I was talking about. I want to be to the point. I want you to be able to follow the instructions. So if you're watching this and you have no idea what a compressor is, it's really not for you. But if you want to learn, if you're making drums for drum and bass and you want to learn how to get them from I can make drums sound like a drum kit, but at the same time it sounds like a child's made it, because this one, just taking some techniques of mine without too much detail. You've got to know what you're doing before you'd watch this video. There we go then. This is the main snare. I'm going to unsolo everything and just solo that snare. Now that's a hell of a difference from the one that we did. There is more on it. I have got another trans gainer, and again I'm not going to go into all this detail. I will say I have had to mess around with the X gain and the out gain, because I really didn't want that pushing at this point. I wasn't trying to get it louder for this part. I wanted it more beefy, again just to sit in that mix. I've got a harsh transient designer there, all transient boost, brilliant preset, and never be afraid to use presets either. Presets are your friend. Then I've got a virtual tape, which is something I don't use very often, but I just recently got Slate Digital, and I thought, why not just throw that on, see what happens. We'll try and listen to the difference. So that's without, and then with it, it's actually taken a lot of the harshness away, which is probably not a good thing, but considering I added a clap underneath that, it makes up for it. It's for my ears, it's making it sound more real. It's dampening it completely, and I want it to be a flat, punchy snare, and then the crisp will come from the clap that I've added. And I've been a bit naughty and added about 1 to 2 dB around the main hit, which again might be why it's sounding a bit blumpy. I'd recommend sometimes doing this. Because you are getting a lot of mud down there. So if you're not going to take that out, you might consider side chaining it to the sub. But it wasn't too much of a problem as I was just working on drums, and like I say, I would export these anyway. So let's listen to the kick and snare with the clap. This is the kick that I chose. See, that is punchy, and as you can see over here, I've got compression, not a lot of compression if I remember rightly, no, minus 6 dB, and only 1.5 dB of gain, makeup gain on it. Medium attack, very, very quick release, slow release, sorry. No, quick release. I've only just got up, that's just what's happening. Another trans gain on there, envelope shaper as before, quite a lot more going on there because this is, I want it to be punchy. Look at that. That feels like somebody's punching you in the face. If I put that in the position of a cartoon punch, you wouldn't be any the wiser. I'd normally typically do more than one kick, under layer, that kind of thing, but for the purpose of this I didn't feel necessary. Didn't feel like I needed to do that. Excuse me. So yeah, that's the kick, and I'll tell you what, we'll just turn all the plugins off because we're doing great for time. This is the kick, and now some would say what's wrong with that, but I like a bit sharper, so adding the EQ, I've taken a little bit of that harsh out near the bottom and just rounding it off at about 40 Hertz. I probably would side chain this kick to the sub because it is a bit low end heavy. Envelope shaper, you can see the difference, sharpens it up a little bit. Compressor, that's what's doing most of the damage, and we're only going over by 1, but my little Fat FX trick again, and I have to remind you that I would still export these probably 2-3 times, and I would never be afraid halfway through a tune when I'm doing sort of mixing as I go to go, you know what, that bit's not working, let's chop that all out, go back into the original project of the drums, just do it again, put it back in, redo it. As long as you're making what's the word, as long as you're proportioning things as you change, I don't see what's wrong with that. Another trans gain, and then the Fat effects, which I didn't actually need apparently on this. The compressor pushes it over, but the trans gain very nicely brings it back down, which is because I'm on minus 1.8 and then adding 1.1, so we seem to have lost 0.1 of a dB somewhere. So I'm probably not even going to bother with the Fat effects. I mean, it doesn't do anything. You can hear audibly there, it's not changing it. So to save CPU, we'll get rid of it. Right, so let's listen to the kick. Oh, sorry, there's a clap as well. Which is beautiful on its own, to be fair. The clap has got Bittersweet on it, which is a transient designer. Not quite as precise, but if I A-B that, I'll turn the kick off. If I A-B that, so here we go with it off, and then with it. Not much difference going on, to be honest. Now I'm listening back, but it will be doing something, and on monitors you will definitely hear an audible difference. The EQ will definitely hear. Look. Can you hear that horrible fuzzy? It's like it's been recorded for a terrible mic. Not even my snare that was recorded for a terrible mic sounds that bad. So that's that. You can definitely hear the difference there. On, off. And I could have took the tail off, but I'm liking the release. It's sort of white noisy, but I'm liking it a lot. Sorry, 15 minutes left, a little vape. So let's listen to the kick and snare with the clap. What we can quickly do is go on to the master bus. As I explained in the other video, I do like to do a little bit of trickery beforehand, but we can see where they're sitting, how much frequency range is taken up, and then a multimeter is going to tell me that the snare should be sitting around the same level as the kick, same level as the sub as well. And you can see maybe the snare's a tad bit quieter, but again, that is something I would deal with later on in the process. As long as it's sounding nice to me at this point, we can work on drums and work around it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mute the kick and snare bus. And remember, I said that these are summing tracks, which means I can automate the track as a whole, and I can add plugins without having to do sends. I would use sends typically for parallel compression, which I don't use very often. If I was to say do these drums without the snare, so it was just the clap. Sorry, that's mute. Just the clap. Then I might parallel compress just to get that a little bit more beefier. There's no point in this though. But forgot to say, I've stuck another glue on the bus of the kick and snare. Not much going on there. That is the bare minimum, but it's going to be doing something. Oh dear. It's just making this a little bit more stuck together. It's very quick attack, so it's not going to be doing transient designing. It's not there for that. It's not going to hit the transient of the attack. It's going to make everything flatter and level up. But again, there isn't much going on, which I didn't think was necessary. Well, that's embarrassing. So here's the next part then. We're going to look at these now. These are my hats and perks, as you can see. I will explain why this is muted in a minute. Should be there. But here we go. These are the hats. Oops, daisy. So they're the hats. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 channels of hats. Again, there'd probably be a lot more involved. Probably be a lot more there. But then sometimes I build tracks with like that amount of hits, and then add more at the later stages. I know for a fact there'd probably be tom rolls and snare rolls and reverse little bits and bobs, and then probably some extra shakers and whatnot. But with the time we've got, this is what was, I think, necessary to show you how I build drums. Again, with these, I'm not going to go into every little aspect of all the plugins, but I will explain why I think that needed it. And if you choose to listen to these things, then thank you for taking my advice. If not, I appreciate it, and hopefully whoever's watching this can maybe help me out with something as well, if you've got different techniques. Let's put the kick and snare bus on. Apologies for the CPU being a bit laggy. Like I say, this is I normally work from my MacBook, from my mini Mac, but for this I decided to use the MacBook because then I can go anywhere. I think I probably did these drums sat there watching a film, to be honest. Again, if you're wearing one headphone and you've been doing it for quite a while, you can sit there and just merrily go about your business any way you want with a MacBook, which I've found very good recently, but I'm sure people know that. Right, so let's take the kick and snare off and let's go through these hats one by one. So first one's a ride, and there's quite a lot of bit. I will explain everything, so let's listen to that with nothing on. Nice ride, very nice sounding, very nice tonality to it. I think I've used this several times in tracks, to be honest, in actual tunes that I've released. Probably not as prominent as this though. I tend to put the rides a lot quieter in the mix, but for this I wanted that old schooly ting 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 vibe. So let's go through it then. EQ, see if you can hear the difference. Yeah, a lot of low end being cut out there. Just making room for any. There's going to be frequencies around this range that are really not going to be needed to be there. You see, the thing is, you might not be able to hear that, but the more there'll be something here, believe me. And then the more you get 50 tracks in a tune, you've got some muddy horribleness that you don't even know where it's from. I remember about 3 years ago, I used to use a plugin, and it had a 50 hertz sort of tape white noise on it, and I'd used it. I think it was a Waves exciter, and you can put it on 50 hertz, 60 hertz, or off. And I didn't really tamper with it. And then before I knew it, I'd put this exciter on maybe 20 tracks in the tune, and there was a massive white noise sound, even when you stopped, because they're based on, because they're emulators for hardware. Even when the song wasn't playing like this, you would hear white noise. So always, top tip, always get rid of space that doesn't appear to have anything, unless you're intending to leave it in, which I wouldn't personally, not for this type of music. And always learn the plugins before you stick them on everything, and then have that problem that I had for quite a while, but I got over it. So yeah, EQ, and then a nice reverb from Logic, beautiful reverb. It's very long reverb, as you can tell. If we A-B it again, so off, and then it's very big, but at the same time it's sort of gated. I didn't want it to be stretching too far, but it does sound gated. I'm not sure how I've done that, because it's got quite a long length and a little bit of pre-delay. It might be the wet, it might be the signal. That was, let's go full. Yeah, that just sounds horrible, and you can really hear that pre-delay when you do that. So I think that works for me. Obviously it sits well in that mix. Stereo width, not taking the mids out, but I'd probably use another plugin for that. I'd probably use Center by Waves, which seems to work for me. Bit of width, let's see that without. Obviously, if you are an intermediate producer and you know the things I'm talking about, you know that the higher sounds are out to the side, middle is lower sounds, and I like to get my drums very wide. And in the current climate of not playing in clubs, why not experiment with some wideness? I've actually been rabbiting about these rides for too long. There is a virtual mix bus there, with a saturator and exciter from Slate Digital, just to give it a bit more excitement, bit of fuzz. If we want to hear the rest of these drums, we're going to have to get a move on. So the next one is this hat. And that's got another beautiful reverb on it, which is called Chroma Verb, new to Logic. Allows you to shape it as an EQ. This is very, very handy, believe me. I can just shape in where I don't want it to be, where you do envelope. I did bounce that out because of the CPU on that Chroma Verb goes a bit nutty. So at the moment, it's all about filling in those gaps. If you listen to the kick and snare within that bit, just making it sound wide. At this point, I haven't got anything on the Hat and Perks bus, but I'd probably use a sidewinder, which give it a lot of space. I just want those hats to be big. I want it to be on it. If I was listening on monitors, I want the hats to be right out here, and then the kick there punching you in the face, and the bass surrounding. I have a visual representation in my mind when I work on tunes. Pardon me. So here's a crash here to start the bar. Probably wouldn't use this crash. I think I bunged it in just for the purpose of this. Let's cut that down. But I like it. Now I've said it, I do like it. What's on it? So you can see there, taking out the highs, the harshness of it on the EQ, just to stop it conflicting with any of these objects here, and to stop your ears from bleeding. An exciter, which is funny because I probably excited it because of the lack of, but that's exciting the frequencies that remain. So as long as there's no harsh frequencies, it'll probably sound a bit tingier, but it won't be ruining the mix envelope. A bit of a weird envelope on that. Let's listen to the crest without that. It sounds a bit dead, doesn't it? Definitely lifts the release up a little bit to give that a bit more a bit more room in the mix. And with this, I would probably have it very wide, wider than the rest, because I want it to hit you. Or maybe I'd add another one and sort of pan it and get that wideness from that. There is a reverb on it. These are brilliant plugins. They're what are they? Kilohertz. You can buy them separately from the Kilohertz website, or they come in the Slate Digital package. Very easy, very simple, as you can see, but they do a good job. So let's listen to that without the reverb. Dies off by there, obviously, and now can hear it extending out, which is what I want. So the next, don't think there's much on this, no, but there is a little trick of the trade here that I like to use. Sample delay, different amount left and right. There's not much going on there, but a different amount. Let's really make that obvious. Can you hear that? If I turn that off put it on, that's way too much, obviously, but for the example of this, see what it's like. Still too much, still seems to drift off, but that's widening that really far. So again, sample delay. If you are intermediate producer and you know what a delay is, you know what a sampler is, you know what a widener is, but you've never seen this, sample delay, change the left and right signal, will widen that up, or at least give it the perspective that it is, because your ears are hearing it at different times, obviously, which is what a stereo is, different signals. And the EQ there rolling off the bottom end, not much going on. And finally, just quickly finish with this, it's a weird kick, and I can't remember where I got it from. I think I was messing around with some drum fills, and I just stuck this in. You'll hear it, hang on. It's sort of making a double kick effect. There's not much going on that. Oh, there is actually. There's a simple sample delay again, sorry. Doing the same as we just spoke about. EQ, and there is a bit going on the virtual mix rack, exciter and trimmer. So that's cutting off a bit of the end, but boosting it at the same time. Brilliant plugin. It's a bit naughty. If you're a gain-phobe, don't use it. But I like to whack things up, especially when they're at -15. And yes, the exciter again. But yes, it's adding that kind of double kick effect, which I liked more than. Let's do this quickly before we go. Is that even in the right place? I don't think it is. There we go, right. Do this quickly. It's too heavy for me. I don't want that. I'm not making a dance floor banger to be in the charts or anything. I just want that. Just that little bit. Just that little bit there. And that's about it. We'll just take one quick look before we go at the multimeter of the whole thing, just so you get an idea of what I'm trying to get at. So you've got the kick and snare, the sub will be about here, the highs are about the same level, which is perfect for me, and then again you've got that region there for the rest of the womp wompy womp womp bits and vocals. Vocal typically sits at about 1 to 2k, so nice room. So that's about it for this. Hopefully I've gone into enough detail, and hopefully if you watch this on a YouTube channel you actually get something from it. Thank you very much.